One question that I'm often asked is what drove us to create such an extensive research program on learning transfer? Now, to answer that question, I need to take you back about 20 years to the late 1980s, early 1990s. And there was quite a paradigm shift that began at that time in the training world. And that paradigm shift was away from focusing just on learning outcomes to focusing on the performance outcomes that occurred after learning. And that shift has been underway ever since as organizations continue to demand more and more accountability from their training investments and looking for return on investment. And that return occurs not from the learning that takes place, but rather the use of that learning. Well, back in the early 1990s, my colleagues and I were taking a hard look at this issue, and we looked hard at the learning transfer literature because it was widely known then, as it is now, that the majority of learning never got used on the job. And we realized that the weak link in the chain was not what took place in the classroom. We know a lot about how to teach people, but the weak link in the chain was how to get that learning used on the job. And we looked around at all of the literature on learning transfer, and what we saw was an emerging field of research, but one that lacked a lot of clarity. And most importantly, there was no clear definition of what the factors were that affected learning transfer. That is, would be either barriers or catalysts to learning transfer, let alone a way to measure them and diagnose them within organizations. And so we sat back and we said, you know what? Here it is. If we want to increase ROI from training investments, we have to be able to get learning to transfer from the classroom, from the learning event, into job performance. And how in the world are we ever going to do that if we can't tell the field the factors that need to be in place to make that happen? And how in the world are we going to do that if we can't provide a tool to help them diagnose those problems?